other stars.
Hi, I'm Jeff Gilbert, and I'm your host today. Thanks for joining us. Stay with us. We're going to have a great show for you here today. I would describe myself as a person misplaced by time. Well, the reason I started doing this is because when I was about 7 or 8, watching Ed Sullivan and the Lawrence Welk Show, live shows and variety shows, you name it, whoever was on. Jackie Gleason, Red Skelton was on when I was a kid, and loved those shows and just always loved comedians. And Jack Benny, one of my all-time favorites. And if he isn't, I don't know how he couldn't be. The first time I ever saw the Ed Sullivan Show, I realized that was like, great show business, and seeing the rock bands as well, but he'd always have like Jimmy Durante or Jack Benny, you name it. All the old-timers from the 30s and 40s were still alive until the 70s or 80s even, and still there are a few left. But they've always been with us, and I think they always will be. And through me, hopefully I can keep that alive. Well, how I got into music is odd because I never really thought I would sing. I always really wanted to be in radio or something like that. And then suddenly I just started to sing with records when I was about 10 or 11, 12. And then when I was about 15, 16, in Santa Rosa, there was a band called Sammy's Friendly Trio. And after meeting them a few times, they weren't very friendly, but after a while they became friendly, and I started to sing with them off and on, just kidding around, and then people liked it, so I just kind of kept doing it. And I've actually worked in a quarry. Very few people can put that on their resume, but I actually had the rocks to do it.
I'd love to get you on a slow boat to China, all to myself alone.
Well, favorite singers, I would say Al Jolson, Bing Crosby, Tony Martin, Dick Todd, the Canadian Crosby. Just so many, it's hard to pinpoint them all. I love them all. Except Harry Von Zell, he couldn't sing. I met Alice Faye and Phil Harris together at the Masons at the Fairmont Hotel. They were up there having dinner with Frank Mosier, who wrote the book about him, and he was a friend of mine and my school teacher in Millbrae when I was growing up. And through him, I got to go up there and meet him. And Frederick Hodges was playing the piano that night from the Royal Society Jazz Orchestra, so he was playing like every tune that she ever recorded, and Phil, besides, things that he did, and they were like amazed that he knew all those things. They were all singing along. It was like a really great night. And other times I had met her through Frank Mosier too, different appearances that she made. And then once she was at the Stanford Theater, I got to ride in the limousine with her to the event for a salute to her and all that. But she was another one that was great. I didn't know her as intimately as June McCloy, because I actually rubbed June McCloy's feet when she'd have an ache or something, and I'm not ashamed to tell you, but I have the calluses to prove it. About Tony Martin or something, Alice Faye, where she was working on a movie, Lillian Russell, and came home one afternoon early, and Tony Martin was making a movie with Rita Hayworth called Music in My Heart, and they got off early, but they decided to go back to Tony's house where he had a relationship with Rita in Alice's bed, and Alice came home and saw that, and that was the end of Alice Faye's marriage. That's the official story. No one knows that. But Alice Faye told Frank Mosier, and he told me, so I'm telling you, and please don't tell anyone else. Well, I'd say my favorite film is Wake Up and Live. Starred Alice Faye, Ben Burney, Walter Winchell, and Jack Haley, who played the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz. He's a radio crooner, or he's a vaudeville crooner, and he's going to go on radio, but he gets mic fright, and he can't sing into a microphone, so Alice Faye, the Wake Up and Live girl, is going to help him through that. And while one time he's working as a page for NBC, whatever the radio station is, and he sees a microphone in a room, and the band's playing, it's a remote, so he gets up to the mic and sings, and no one knows who it is, so he's the Phantom Troubadour, Phantom Crooner, whatever it was. And it's really a great film, and you can see it every night on Turner Classic Movies at 1 o'clock in the morning. Actors are real people, and actresses too. They do exactly the same things that we do, only they get paid a lot more for it and live a lot better. But anyway, I've been very fortunate as I've met so many of the great stars from that era, and I would say I've seen probably more stars from that era than actually people who lived in that era, unless they were in the business. The average fan wouldn't be able to have access to those people in that era, you know what I mean? So I've been lucky that way. I can't really say that there's so many memorable moments, I can't name one. Well, I had a great friendship with June McCloy, who recently passed away in the last 3 years or so, and really a great lady, and had so many stories to tell about show business, and She was really one of the first blondes of Hollywood, you know, along with Jean Harlow. And she knew Jean Harlow and said that, you know, they were on a boat trip going out to Catalina one time, and she jumped off the boat naked. Jean Harlow and everybody else just did the same thing, and she kind of led the parade. And I asked June, well, did you go in? And she goes, of course not. Well, you know damn well she did. So we found out after she had died that she was married 4 times, and she only admitted to 2 of them. So she was married to Joseph Skank's son, I think. Yeah, something like that. And he was a big owner of MGM and all that. He was the head of LB, mayor. Well, June McCloy's biggest claim to fame is the movie Reaching for the Moon. That's her first film, and it was with Douglas Fairbanks Sr., and it was also Bing Crosby's first film. And then she did a few other things. June Moon, which is, I think, a George F. Kaufman play. She did that with Jack Oakie, and that's kind of a lost film. I think they just discovered it. And a lot of shorts. She did a series called The Gay Girls, which for some reason they don't play, but I guess you can imagine why. But it's when the word meant something else. But I'm trying to think of some other films she made. Glamour for Sale. They're like the Marx Brothers film. Yeah, that's the one right there. The Marx Brothers. Go West is her big film, and pretty much her last, because she got married after that to her last husband that she was with for so many years, Neil Butler, an architect, and then she just gave up show business, and that was it. Kind of like I should probably do, is marry an architect and give up show business, because you can see how far it's come already. All right, enough. In 1983, I got my FCC license.
You heard, you're sharp, and you also have a funny odor.
All right, well, I'm sorry. The altitude.
Yeah, it's the altitude, all right. And that stuff that you drink out of that carrot bottle.
Carrot bottle?
Yeah, isn't that a carrot bottle?
From then on, I tried to work at all sorts of stations. I worked at a Christian station for about 3 weeks and couldn't handle that. And then I got an internship at a station in Santa Rosa, KQTE, which they used to call KQT, which made everybody sick, and that's why the station didn't last long. But I worked there for about a year as an intern, and then I guess they gave me my own show on weekends for about 4 or 5 weeks, and it was great. And the boss loved it, but the program director hated me, and they wanted me to play reel-to-reel tapes, which was fine. But what happened, they changed the equipment because they opened another station up in Lake County, so they had equipment from like 1950, old junk. So everything went haywire, and then I didn't do that anymore. They wanted me to go home. But that's how it worked. But then in 3 years ago, I guess, they started a station here in Sonoma, and a friend of mine, Joe Hershaft, a musician, had a show on there, and he asked me, would you like to do one? And I said, no, not really. I don't want to do it. I wasn't interested. And then all of a sudden, they bugged me about it a few times, and I said, well, yeah, I'll do it, just to try it out. And then I did it on the weekend, and now I do it every day from Monday through Friday and all that. And it's just wackiness prevails, but what are you going to do? What's the difference between Rudy Valley and Roman Polanski? Roman Polanski got kicked out of the country, and Rudy Valley was held in exile on a Hollywood hilltop. He was 40 when he first met her, and she was 15, so 18. So he was 43, I guess, when they married. You know, he's passed away since '86, but his wife, Eleanor, she's probably about 70-something. He married her when she was, I believe, 18, and he met her when she was 14, up on Kings Beach, up in Tahoe. But her mother wanted her to marry Rudy Valley, and so she did. And spent the rest of her days until Rudy passed away very happily. She's a wonderful lady, and hopefully we'll interview her someday. So it all comes down to this: how many times does 40 go into 15? And if you need to ask Rudy Valley. He's at the Hollywood Cemetery. Well, my interest in old stars goes back to like the 70s, when Richard Lamparski had a series of books out called Whatever Became Of. And it would have all the old stars in there, and it would say where they're living now, and it would usually say their real name or where they're living now, and no one had interest in them anymore. You know, they didn't have agents or anything. So I would call directory assistants and just get the phone number and actually call people. I talked to like Darla Hood from the Little Rascals. Jack Haley of The Wizard of Oz was a great guy. I talked to him many times, and really a nice guy, would keep me on the phone for like 20, 30 minutes. You know, it was incredible when you're like 15 or 16. And so was the bill when my parents got it. But, you know, I can't remember. I talked to so many, but that was always just been my interest in that profession, you know, people in it. And in Sonoma, we're lucky where we've had people live here like Ludwig Stossel, who was he was the little old winemaker for Italian Swiss colonies in 100 movies. Look him up. He's in Casablanca. I'm Jeff Gilbert. Thanks for watching. Keep your sunny side up and always do it with your pants on.